light day today. Hockey here in Nashville. The Preds are playing.
Well,
of course, our normal
in Pittsburgh, but the game's on. So.
Yeah. There's a lot of people probably going to be watching at home as opposed to coming out here through the traffic. So that's all right. Welcome our regulars who come here who want to learn. Today we have Larry Simons, one of my old brokers. The broker I started with. Larry is a wealth. Every time I'm in Fort Myers, Florida, I go and see him and just sit there like a little kid just listening to Larry. Just brainstorm. The guy has a tremendous mind. Been in the game for 42 years, $200 million in sales. Just a fabulous guy. But Steve, why don't you come up and while we're waiting for Larry to get queued up, why don't you come up and talk about green for a few minutes and what green is all about and what we're trying to accomplish here. Right now, I'm going to bring my partner up, Steve Chasen.
How's everybody doing today?
Good.
Well, so some of you guys have been with us for a while, and some are a little bit newer to these meetings.
How many they're on now?
So we started Green some time ago to try to bring education. We get a little bit of feedback there. Try to bring education in real estate to the general public at an affordable price. And we wanted to start these investor clubs to bring a cultural center together, get together, talk about deals, share ideas. And, we're even making deals here since we've started this. I know you've worked with a couple of guys, and we've partnered with people. Just by going through the motions and coming here, and we knew it would be light at night, but we still go through the motions and show up. And we've had some great speakers. We really have not been pushing our sales hard because we wanted to make sure we had a good quality base of education. But that's going to change pretty soon since we're at roughly 4 available 1-hour online training sessions a week. I think we've got a really strong base for our education. So we're in the process of looking for 2 sales reps to hire, and we're going to make a harder push. And as we found, when we push, we actually bring in more voices, more people that can add value to our education. So we're pretty excited about that. The way we structure our relationship with Green, with our own company here in Nashville, we run an investor club meeting here every week, as you guys know. And it is free and open to the public. We want everyone to come and join, learn about real estate. But we also are a network marketing company, and you can pay for online training. It's $99 a month. Be a representative is an additional $9.97. It's total $109.94. And if you invite your friends, you can actually get paid to learn. Obviously, not everyone is out there full-time selling. We're not concerned with that because we like the value of what we have. And for what we do, we just want to keep growing the ideas, the people, the education, because we can afford to do it with our existing business and basically making money building these relationships, getting more investors to work with, bringing in more wholesale deals, partnering with more people. And so what we do here with Green, it's not just the value of the network marketing business. That's more of a long-term play. The short, medium-term play is actually building these relationships. And as most of you know who have been in the game, the most important part about real estate education, it's not just the facts and the figures. It's actually the people that you meet. You have to immerse yourself in this culture. You have to talk the talk. You have to experience what's going on, hear the ideas, hear the deals that go down, network with agents, lenders, hard money people, partners, contractors. And when you do these things, you begin to be able to put together a team. You begin to formulate confidence in your own ideas about investing, and you get to a certain point where, all right, we're ready to go. And it's something that we're passionate about, so we enjoy it. We like showing up here every week and talking about real estate, and we're excited to start the harder push. We're going to be bringing on, just to let you know for the people online, we've got in our existing roster, which Larry Simons is I believe he's on once or twice a month online, but we have Jeremy Tabor, who is the number one, he's the broker owner of the number one exit realty franchise in the United States out of over 700 franchises. He's the number 2 exit real estate agent in the world. He's a multimillionaire investor and realtor, and he's built what we call a B quadrant business, a business that he can essentially walk away from and makes him over $1 million a year. And he's training with us twice a month. I teach once a month about auctions, which we do pretty well in the auction game. Don't want everyone to know that, but we have Paul Kazanowski, who is a very prolific flipper. He does anywhere from 5 to 15 homes a month. I'd say he's probably on pace for 80 to 100 homes this year. This is full gut renovations. We just actually flipped him that deal in Franklin, and this was just yesterday, and he's already got the thing, already got it gutted. So, but Paul is he's a ball of fire and a bundle of energy, and truly a national level talent, and really should be on TV, and we'll probably see him there soon. So we're fortunate to have some great trainers, and now that we've got to this point, we're going to start a little more of a harder core sales pitch, even though what we do at our investor club meetings here, not sales pitch. That's not what we want to do. We're here to network, and we're here to make money, and not just in the investment side. But we do encourage people to come on for the online training, and we will be starting investor clubs in other areas. For example, if I know Fort Myers is going to get up and running when they get a little more active. All of these meetings are simulcast online, so anyone that starts a club in any part of the country, if they want to go ahead and lead and take a round and actually, get a club going, get it running, then they can use Green's platform, and we can simulcast that meeting. So as people are watching our meeting from all over the country, you can do the same thing with your meeting, and that's what we want. We want to add those voices. It's all scalable within our platform, and basically we have all the pieces in place. We've paid for the network marketing programming, the system. We've paid for the director of education. We've paid for the intellectual property to get us to this point. And now it's just a matter of that sort of shared economy of building ideas and more education. And quite frankly, I love hearing about other markets. I think it just tells me a lot about the big picture in real estate. We have an incredibly hot market in Nashville. Les and I were just lamenting about the fact that it's virtually impossible to buy any kind of cash flow rental property, even though we do get some. But when you get some, the deal is probably so good where you could flip it for $100,000. So if you literally, if you got something that's decent for cash flow, you could probably make $100,000 that day selling it. And we've got one like that. Make probably $200,000 if we sold it, but we'll probably hold on to that for rental for a little while just because we don't want to get crushed on taxes. But we are eventually, once we get a little more established, I'd love to get out into some of these other markets and do some investing myself. You had mentioned Indianapolis, and from what I understand, that's a pretty active market also, but you can still get some decent deals there that make good rentals and cash flow well, which is pretty difficult to do in Nashville right now. I mean, even within an hour of Nashville, we still can't. And we're driving 3 hours to go to auctions to buy properties sometimes, which is fun. I enjoy it, but it would be nice if we could just get some decent, entry grade rental properties to buy for cash flow. But that's just we're gonna have to wait for the crash again before we start scooping those up. So, are we working on Larry? Yeah, are we working on getting Larry online?
And we also got the 1031 exchange guy.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
gosh.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
Larry's computer is rebooting.
Okay, yeah, so this happens sometimes. Yeah, Dave Foster is an amazing 1031 guy. Have you used him yet?
No,
Yeah, Dave's great, and he's a fabulous communicator. He really knows his game, and that's just it's a key tool to building wealth. To be able to use those 1031s and avoid the tax man. And
Hey, Steve.
yes,
Tell them that.
Mark, I can hear you.
Yeah.
They can hear you too.
We record every class.
So on top of being able to simulcast this anywhere in the country, you could market what you're doing virtually with your investor club. We also record and archive all of these sessions. Any speaker that we have come in, it's all recorded and archived on our website, learnfromgreen.com.
Wrong room.
So
Next room, I can hear an echo.
yeah, but
No, tell them.
and it's not, obviously with technology, it's not perfect. Sometimes sometimes we get a little feedback. Sometimes we get a little bit of skip on that line.
One of the difference between Green and a lot of the companies, we don't buy any education programs from anyone. We film all our own stuff every time. Today alone, we were filming Dave Foster.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that, that what we're doing is it's a cumulative effect of what we're building. We're building these education modules constantly and consistently. We don't just go out and create a script or a book and then go out and try to sell this as a program. That's not the idea. Okay, I'm not going to teach you about real estate by giving you a pamphlet saying, "Here you go, boy, go for it." You know. Plus, as we've discussed before, and I certainly respect anybody that has the ability. In fact, we're going to probably work with one gentleman who is a great investor, and he charges people a lot of money, but he also brings them in and partners with them. He's got a pretty stiff buy-in, but he partners with them on their first 3 deals. Okay, and so it's just I am personally of the opinion that in education, that if you take a lot of money from somebody, then you have a moral responsibility to hold their hand beyond just a week session. That's just not right. And from a manager's standpoint, from somebody that understands business, you understand that 80% of the population is wired a certain way, 10 to 20% is wired the other way, and that 80% you have to work harder with to get them to the level where they're going to succeed. Whereas 10 or 20% of people are just going to go out and do it themselves. And it doesn't matter. They're just going to stumble. They're going to fight their way through it.
Pay a lot.
Sure. So so our philosophy about the education is instead of taking $10,000 from 100 people, we want to take $100 from 10,000 people. That's kind of the goal. And we want to also build a culture. I mean, you've got to have friends and relationships. You've got to come to places like this and share and enjoy the ideas about real estate. You got to show up at your investor clubs. And even though it may be mundane, it may get a little dry sometimes. Sometimes it's a little boring. But what else are you doing? Unless this is one of these things where if you find the time for it. I mean, I have in the last 6 months had what most people would consider a couple of retirement level events is what I like to call them. Okay, when we flip a property, when we flip one and we make $400,000, when we flip another one and we make $650,000, that doesn't just happen by sitting at home on a Wednesday night eating Cheetos on the sofa. It happens because we're showing up here and we're building relationships, we're forming partnerships, we're finding deals, we're working with people that know how to get deals done, and and even we've got one coming up, same thing, we've got, $160,000 profit coming. So these are just auctions. I see some of these guys, sometimes I want to laugh. You see these guys are talking about flipping properties and like, okay, I don't know. I guess I've flipped 3, 4, 500. I don't count. I've made $500,000 on a deal 3 times, and I see these guys, and it's they think that there's some grand system. No, the grand system is you show up and you talk to people and you meet people and you pick the brains and you develop the relationships. That your grand system is your culture. Beyond that, there's a million ways, and we can go, and we will go into no money down techniques. Control as much property as you want. Okay, I can go grab a 1-page contract. Find some young kid, say, here you go, killer, go take this out, knock on some doors, see who will sign this thing, and wait, here's an assignment. Okay, we can assign it to somebody. That's great. It's really easy. Here's my title attorney. 3 things you can do. Boom, 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 make some money. Or if you have a little bit more of a marketing mind and you want to drop some cash on throwing some letters out there, and you can put these things together, then you could try some direct mail. I'm not a huge fan of that because I don't think a lot of people have the marketing mind that you need to do that. But some people make it work very well. So it's a specific talent for a specific skill set. That's another thing that I try to do is recognize what people's strengths are. You want to play to your strengths, whatever you're doing in this game. Whether you got to add some value to someone else's game that has a strength that you don't have. Yes.
Ask Ian what he does. Is this your friend?
So Mark and Ann, yeah.
Oh, yeah, ask them what they do over there. They're in Indianapolis.
Right around Indianapolis.
How's the market up there?
Are they, this
Marcus, can you unmute them?
He probably has their phone.
Yeah, go ahead.
Are these the guys that buy the $100 house?
No.
Yeah, just wanted to, give my, I don't know if you guys can hear me or not. Okay, I got the green screen.
Oh, yeah, we hear you good.
Okay. I do real estate, currently, Mark financial, advising and insurance. And, the market here has been, really tough as well as far as finding those deals. They're fewer and farther between. And when you see them, there's a lot of people out there jumping all over them. So again, the good days, like you said, might have to wait for another bust before you see them again. But that's, kind of why we're here listening, is to find what, maybe some people who have seen a couple of cycles at this point, and have some tips and tricks to, where to go and what to look out for. And, I'm always up to learn a new trick or two. So.
Years old, I went through a lot of cycles in my life. The reason we started Green, I'm a traveler. Philly, I've been 30 years in Florida, now here. Now, as soon as Larry our speaker gets, like everybody else, they probably started looking into this 2 minutes ago. But the reason we started Green is if your market is not good there, it's good somewhere else. I mean, I was in the epicenter, Fort Myers, Florida, of the crash. But it didn't crash everywhere at the same time. It crashes in locations. So you try to stay ahead of the curve, and that's why I come up here to the Nashville Vault property. But if you can't buy there, and I tell the same thing to people in Nashville here, if you can't buy here because it's $300,000, go somewhere where it's not $300,000 to get in, and it's crazy. We were just in Los Angeles and San Francisco. You can't get in the market less than $800,000 there. And 80% of all investors are new investors. Breaking into the business at $800,000 for a handyman special, that's a little tough. But we started this Green so you can watch a Fort Myers, Florida, where you can still buy, like we did, a $30,000 2-bedroom, 2-bath condo that sells for $65,000. Well, hey, I'm in. You can go to Tampa right now and buy a crap load of condos for less than $50,000, and they're the 1970s model. Well, go in there, and how fast can you fix a little kitchen? You can do 10 of those things. So I got guys in Jersey going to start a group out there. I want you guys to start a group over there. Texas and Chicago, everywhere. So when the market is bad somewhere, let's start talking to all our friends or watching their meetings and see where we can, now you can start making relationships with these guys down in Florida or anywhere and go by. And it doesn't have to be across the state or way down to Florida. It could be the next town outside your neighborhood, 2-3 counties out. I want to start a group out there. Even from here, I want to get 10 groups around Nashville. Because here they're 300,000, but two counties away, you can still buy a 60, 70, $80,000, POS.
Well, and that's kind of, I guess you guys probably have something similar to what we have, except maybe dialed down just a couple of notches. We do, Les and I in particular, we buy at auction. That's our forte. And we'll drive an hour out to get a good deal. It's just kind of, hour to hour. Yeah. We got, the last one we bought last week it was a 1,500 square foot brick ranch and 20 acres, and we got it for $71,000. And the neighbor is willing to pay for 16 of the acres, the $71,000. So it's a pretty good deal. We'll get the house out of it for free. Now, Les, you said that in Indiana, your buddy does auctions, and the bank has them. You have to register your
bid. That's the way they do it
your top bid, or
no, just $1 more.
Okay, you have to register for each of the auctions, and if the bank doesn't have a reserve, he winds up picking up houses sometimes for $100.
Yep.
So so this is Les's friend. I guess you guys are friends with Les. Les's friend up there is
That's Ron.
yeah, and he's buying, but he's driving, I guess, all over the state.
Not really.
No,
Outside of Muncie.
Yeah, he pretty well stays in Muncie. Every once in a while,
So he'll buy it. So it's not, obviously it's not as active as Indianapolis.
Oh no,
Okay.
no.
And so, but he winds up buying houses for $100.
Right.
So more. Not rural is not the right word, but it's certainly not the population that Indy does. That Indy has.
I mean, I got a girl in Boise, Idaho. I just talked to her the other day, and I zoomed in on Google. Holy Jesus, there's no neighbors around there. You're like an island in the middle of the mountains, and green is perfect for that because now you can. There's nowhere to drive. There's no suburbs to drive. I mean, everything is in this one little canyon. So, you can use this green to go, now we just started in February. We're just baby steps out of here, but, we want to be able to expand our horizons in buying property elsewhere than our little town because the competition is so stiff.
I know Indy is kind of like, it's not Memphis, but it used to have some of the same investment vehicles. They've got some turnkey wholesale type operations up there that will accumulate rental property and kind of sell it turnkey wholesale, I guess, because it used to cash flow. Do you guys do any of that, or have you ever been involved with any of that?
You know what? Actually, haven't done a whole lot of investing in the. And that's kind of why we wanted to learn more from you guys, is to find where we need to go and what we need to do to kind of find those better deals. Because the deals that are actually coming up on the BLC that I can search and find, I realize aren't the deals, worth buying, and when I do find one that is worth buying, it has multiple offers, and I'm not going to chase a property to make a small.
Is that your multiple listing service?
Yeah. Basically it's just, finding how to go to some of these auctions or where these auctions are held and how to get, in the know more or less. I've been to a tax sale there once a year in October, but just went to my first one last year. And
then just test it. It looks like your microphone's picking up fine. You can see the volume.
Yeah, testing 1, 2, 3.
That's that top on your microphone. Yeah.
That's probably fine.
Yeah, you can increase it a little bit if you want, but should be okay. Yeah. Then hit OK.
Okay.
I said,
Hey there.
to be a part of this conversation. So we're going to turn it over to Larry Simons. He was our speaker tonight. I'm kind of the interim speaker while we were waiting for him. So, guys, without further ado, I think Mark introduced him already. So,
Larry Simons from Home Hunters USA in Fort Myers, Florida. Hey, there's Larry. And there's Dr. Malari. Oh, hey.
Hey.
Hey, Larry.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Nice to see you.
All right, well, we got a sparse crew up here because we got the hockey game from Nashville tonight. But we got Group 1 from Indiana, and I believe elsewhere too. So welcome Larry Simons, and welcome everybody else. Larry is my old broker, not old. He's a young broker. And he taught me everything I know about lease purchases. And I end up buying, 80.
80.
When somebody told me that you don't have to pull a mortgage, that was good enough for me.
Yeah.
And there's some good tricks that he tells you to do. And I still use them today. So
Mute them. It's nothing that you're doing.
all right, go ahead, Larry. It's all you.
Okay. Hey, good evening, everybody. I'm Larry Simons. I'm down here in sunny Southwest Florida, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about lease purchase and lease option. And Andrea's got to get started here on the camera. What's the weather like up there in Nashville?
Beautiful today.
Yeah?
I
a good day?
I was sailing all weekend this weekend.
Great. Okay.
I'm an
Hey,
adult
we're,
now. I can sail.
Ready to start here. Lease purchase and lease option. What I can tell you about that, first about those terms is a number of different names for them. I'm sure you've heard them, and I'm sure we can come up with different ones here in this meeting. But you have rent to own is a possibility that could be construed as a lease purchase. You have lease option. You have lease purchase. You have land contract. I'm sure you all heard that before. And you've also had agreement for deed. Now, the agreement for deed and the land contract is something that people used a long time ago, and it was a tool just like lease purchase. And for instance, Gulf American Land Corporation, selling out all the lots in Lehigh Acres and Cape Coral, they did most of those on a land contract. And the beauty of those was you could take a low down payment, you do your contract on the property, and if the person didn't pay for some reason, back when they put the deal together, the deed was never transferred to the buyer. So if they didn't pay, all they would do is tear up the contract, to notify them in writing that the contract was dead and null and void, and there was no foreclosure necessary. Okay, now the only thing that's happened to land contract and agreement for deed from those days is now they are made in such a way that you can record them. Every county or every municipality that has a recording process says these agreements have to have these certain entities in them to record them. Well, once the agreement is recorded, then if you're the seller and you're taking a low down payment on the property to sell it, and you give them an agreement for deed, and the buyer goes and records it, or the closing company, the title company, or whatever records that agreement for deed or land contract, then you just ruin the whole reason why you were doing it. And the reason why you're doing a lease purchase, lease option, rent to own, is that if the buyer's buying with a low down payment, which is generally the story, if they default, you want the simplicity of getting the property back and not having to go through a foreclosure process. And just to kind of give you an idea, and I'll give you numbers here in Lee County, but for us to do an eviction and remove someone from a lease purchase or a lease option or a lease, an eviction is, we have an attorney here in town that will do them for $500. Now they can range higher than that. I had one that cost $8,000 one time, unfortunately, for my client. But anyway, $500 to $1,000 to do a eviction, whereas especially since the economy changed, the recession, foreclosures can take 6 months to a year to 2 or 3 years or more. I have known people that lived in a house for free for 5 years being foreclosed on. So the lender, shall we say, or seller is spending a year's worth of time and $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $10,000 to get the property back. Well, if they sold that property to a buyer for $2,000 down or $5,000 down, then I mean, really, that's you're way upside down. So that's not what you want to do. You don't want to carry a mortgage or agreement for deed and record it if you're getting a low down payment. The way to solve the problem is to do something that is not recorded, and that way then it only takes an eviction or just signing some addendums to cancel the deal, and you get the property back. Now that makes sense to sell the property with a low down payment. Now you say, well, that's not good for the buyer. Well, no, it's not great for the buyer because as soon as they default, they can be removed of the property via an eviction rather than a foreclosure. But if they bought the property with a low down payment and they're not paying, then they should get out of the property anyway. Okay, so you know the legal process in a foreclosure versus an eviction is a lot more costly and a lot more time taken. So why would a seller do a lease purchase, lease option rather than carry a note mortgage? And the reason is the simplicity of, in case of a default, getting the property back. Okay, so now we know why we're going to do a lease purchase or why the lease purchase works. It is that simple reason. Now that would be why you would sell using a lease purchase, and that would be also why you would buy, because generally speaking, when you buy with a lease purchase, you're buying the property with a low down payment. You are protected with a legal agreement that you can show as being, you know, I own this property, and of course everybody knows that. Just like you would show a lease, that you have a lease on a property. So the rent to own is a lot of times is you know, maybe a lease that has a rent to own clause in it. You have some type of terms worked out. The lease option is a lease with a option to buy in it. Agreement for deed is a formal agreement. Land contract is a formal agreement. And a lease purchase is a semi-formal agreement. What I mean by that is, and what my office and what I've been using in Fort Myers, Lee County area here since 1985, is the lease purchase, because we actually do a sales contract with a lease attached, with a clause in the sales contract that says that if there is a default of the lease or the purchase contract, and that's and or the lease purchase or the contract, then there's a default of both. Now that can cause a problem, but that also is to your benefit in the seller and in the buyer's position, because if you default the lease and you're not paying the lease, you as a seller, you don't want that buyer to, you remove them, they move, they give you the keys back or whatever, and then a year later they come back and they say, hey, I'm ready to buy now, and you've already resold to somebody else, so you know, then you're in default contract. So by tying the two together, you have created a default of either one of them, meaning if the contract called for an additional deposit down the road, and we'll get to how you structure that, but a deposit down the road, if they didn't make that deposit, then they're in default of the contract. They may be paying their lease, but part of your agreement as a seller was they're to pay the lease, and they're also to do the things the contract says. So by tying them together, having one as a default of the other, and or you cause both of them to be in default if one of those parts of the agreement are in default. I hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, so anyway, so that's kind of an advantage, or that's definitely a clause that you really want to put in your lease purchase and your lease option contract. Lease option is simply a lease with a clause in it that says you have the option to buy it. Well, a lot of times there's not a price mentioned. There's not any terms mentioned. And many times in a lease option, when you say, okay, I'm ready to exercise my option, then the seller says, or the buyer says to the seller or whatever, well, okay, now we need to do a sales contract. Well, anytime you have to redo an agreement, things can change. The seller might throw some extra things in there. Well, you have to do this. Well, we didn't talk about that. Well, but now I want that. Okay. With a lease purchase, you have the sales contract already. You have the lease already, and you have your contract all ready to go to your bank to get financing. So it's done. Lease option, you have to revisit it and rewrite a contract to go get your financing. Same thing with rent to own. Agreement for deed, it's all written out in land contract, but the problem is they have all the entities that the buyer can go record it. Now, yes, that's great for the buyer, but that's not great for the seller in the fact that if you default, then you have to go through a foreclosure process, which we just talked about. So why I like to call it a lease purchase, why I use a lease purchase and have done so since 1985, is because you don't have to revisit the agreement. It's all drawn out. It's all there perfectly. Okay. Now, when do you use a lease purchase? Well, as a buyer, I say it to my buyers when I'm representing the transaction and I'm selling them a house. You would only in my opinion, you would only use a lease purchase when you can't go get financing and buy it. Certainly, if you're going to cash the seller out on a transaction, they're willing to take a better price. So in a lot of cases on a lease purchase, you're buying the property for full list price, or you might even be buying the property for more than list price to get your terms that you want. The old term is, I will pay my price in your terms, but you might want, if I want my terms, then I have to pay your price. So there's where the terms come into play. So anyway, when would you use a lease purchase? Is only when you can't pay cash, only when you can't go get financing, or it's not convenient to get financing, or whatever. So it's a way, and the way I explain it to my buyers is this is a way in which you can buy. If that's the only way you can buy, then that's the best way for you to buy, okay? Because buying is the key, all right? The same thing I would say, and I'm jumping a little bit off the subject here, but same thing I say about an adjustable rate mortgage versus a fixed rate mortgage. Why would you ever do an adjustable rate mortgage if you can afford a fixed rate mortgage? Well, the reason why you would is because maybe the adjustable rate mortgage is starting out at 1.5% or 2.5%. And the only way you can buy this home, and you might be skipping a step, you might be not buying your first home, you might be saying, well, gee, if I can do an adjustable rate mortgage, I can buy a more expensive home, and I can skip that first home, where you would buy it, and then when you can afford the other one, you sell it, and then buy another one. You can go straight to the more expensive home, and the mortgage payment is low, and you can afford it. So that would be the only reason why I would say to use an adjustable.
On day 3, you make some souvlaki. Day 4, that Sunday gravy, you can make it into hanky soup, or what I call hanky soup for the soup.
So the bottom line is, with lease purchase, I would suggest only using it when you have to. That's the only way you can buy. Now, the beauty of the lease purchase, and again, I'm talking about the beauty of this type of financing: rent to own, lease option, agreement for deed, land contract unrecorded, and the lease purchase, is you can practically name your terms. Now, when I say that, people get way out of whack. I mean, sometimes they say, well, yeah, I've heard about it. If you can do a rent to own or lease purchase or lease option, I understand that you can buy the property for less, put no money down, get all the rent that you pay towards the purchase price. You can extend it when you want to. You can do all these things. Typically, yeah, you can do each and every one of those things, but maybe not all of them together. Okay, so if you're going to get all the rent towards the purchase, which is not generally the rule, then maybe you've got to pay a higher price. Okay, or if you pay full price and you maybe get a lower rent number, or if you get a part of the rent as credit, you may have to pay more for it, but it's to your benefit because the home's going to appraise for more. The other advantage to the lease purchase is that if you have a contract, then the price is secure. So if the home goes up in value in the next 2 or 3 years, and you have a 2 or 3 year lease purchase, then you are buying it at the earlier year's price. It may be full price now and maybe a little bit higher than market, but 2 years from now, it's a great buy. Okay, so there's some advantages there. So keep in mind that you may get only parts of the advantages of lease purchase. You would not get all of them. You will get parts of them. So what I normally say to my buyers is, look, you've got your credit that you have to straighten out. You need a year or two to straighten out your credit. So this is a way in which you can buy. You're building equity because property should go up in value. You're getting part of the rent towards the purchase. Okay, and what happens is you're building equity. You're cleaning up your credit. You got plenty of time to get your mortgage. There's no stress, no hassle. And finally, the ending date is a year or 2 years or whatever, and you have to close in that time. Now, when I mentioned to you the credit of rent, we'll say, okay, let's just say it's a $100,000 house and the rent's $1,000 a month. I will typically write in the agreement that the buyer gets a $200 a month credit. Well, let's say it's a 2 year lease purchase, so you're looking to get about another $4,800 credit when you close. Well, let's say you're ready to close in a year. What would be wrong with asking the seller, if you're going to close the deal sooner, to still give you the $4,800 credit, even though you're not putting the money in there for the 2 years, you're closing sooner, and they get their money sooner and they can do something with it. So a lot of times that works. Whatever rent credit there is, no matter when you close, you could possibly get that credit. So that's good. It's kind of what I call a built-in savings account for closing costs, because no matter what mortgage you go for, if you're getting a new mortgage, there's going to be a lot of closing costs. Well, if you have a rent credit of $100 a month or $200 a month, you've got an extra $2,400 or $1,200 towards closing costs. A lot of times you may have to rewrite the contract for that to work with your lender, depending on what loan you go for. Okay, so let's recap why you would use a lease purchase. You would only use a lease purchase because maybe you have credit repair to go through, that you need time. Now, as an agent, I teach my agents to not sell somebody a lease purchase home, not sell them on a lease purchase until they have visited with a mortgage broker and they get pre-qualified and they get told what they have to do to straighten out their credit. And then the mortgage broker can tell them how long that's going to take. Well, if the mortgage broker tells them it's going to take a year of good credit after you straighten your credit out to get qualified for an FHA mortgage, then why would you do a 1 year lease purchase? Okay, so I had a buyer that we put together a 2 year lease purchase, but we said, okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, we were presenting this to you, but the buyer is meeting with the mortgage broker to see how long it's going to take. Well, they were receptive to a 2 year lease purchase, and this is when the market wasn't so good. So the house wasn't selling. They didn't want it, but they didn't want a tenant. They wanted to sell it, and they had to get their full price because they owed so much on the house. So we went to the mortgage broker, and the mortgage broker says, well, it's going to take you a year to get your credit straightened out. Then you need 1 year of good credit to qualify for the FHA mortgage. So that's 2 years. And then if that takes you longer, I think they also had a bankruptcy. Okay. Well, the bankruptcy wasn't discharged yet, and I think you have to be, to get an FHA mortgage, you have to be out of, after the discharge of a bankruptcy 2 years. And their bankruptcy wasn't even done yet. Okay. So we said, the buyer's still interested in buying. We're still interested in giving you your full price. We want to move in the first of the month, but we need a 3 year lease purchase. So we put the deal together, and everybody was up and up about it. And the seller said, you know what? Okay, we'll go 3 years. And what happened is that we actually ended up closing that transaction 3 years later. Now, when can you use the lease purchase? You can use a lease purchase on anything, a single family home. It's best to use it when you're buying and you're going to live there, but you can use it as an investor. As Mark said, how many did you say, Mark, you bought? on a lease purchase? I mean, it's, pardon?
Over 80.
Over 80.
Over 80.
I mean, so there you go. Well, you didn't live in all 80 of those, did you?
I didn't live in any of them.
You didn't live in any of them. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, to give you an example, I had and the market was a little rough at this time. I think it was in the 80s when the interest rates were 18%. Okay. And I had a builder in Sanibel that owned, he just got back 2 fourplexes in Pine Manor. And most of you know where Pine Manor is. Okay. Kind of a rough neighborhood in South Fort Myers, but a good rental neighborhood. And the seller didn't want the properties. I had no buyers for it. Nothing was happening. And I had one of my students that I was teaching investing in real estate. And the team came to me and said, we want to buy something. We don't have a lot of money, but we can fix up. We can paint. We can clean. We can manage our own properties. We have a rental property now. Do you have any sellers that are don't wanters? Okay, that's a good term to use. So a seller that doesn't want the property. That's what you want to look for. So anyway, I found them one. I had this listing I was telling you about that was 2 fourplexes, which would be each fourplex was 2 duplexes, but they were titled together. And in Pine Manor, every single one of the units needed some TLC. Okay, and these buyers were a young couple, unmarried, very anxious to get into investment properties, wanted the positive cash flow, didn't have a lot of money, and they wanted to buy something. So I said, well, here's one, maybe this seller would do it, okay? So sure enough, we looked at them, they said, we'll take them. I said, what do you mean you take them? Well, okay, I think they were listed at $99.9 a piece, okay, for each fourplex, okay? So that's what, $200,000 roughly. So they said, I said, well, how much money can you come up with? Well, they said, well, we can get rent prorations and deposits, right, at the closing. I said, well, you're going to manage them yourself? And they said, yeah. So we were figuring out they were going to have $2,500 or so in prorations and deposits and stuff like that. So they put $5,000 down on each property, okay? Well, they only ended up needing probably about $3,000 or $4,000 at the closing, okay? And it wasn't a closing, it's just when we signed the contracts and dispersed the money. So they bought these 2 properties, and we did a 2-year lease purchase because they weren't sure when they were going to get financed, and they didn't want to do it and lose their $10,000 down payment and all the money they put into the property if they couldn't get the financing. So the seller says, well, you know what, if they're going to take it over, I don't have to touch it. I get a rent check every month. I don't care. And they're going to renovate it. I don't have to do any repairs. That's another thing I didn't mention as a seller advantage is when a buyer buys on a lease purchase, they're buying the property, right? So they're buying it as is, but not as is at the closing, as is at the time they move in. And the reason why I do that is because what if the AC broke down a month before closing? Okay, and the seller, as a normal landlord, is supposed to fix the AC. Well, the AC tech says, well, why would you put $300 or $400 into this old system and put a new compressor in when you should put a whole new one in for $2,000? Well, the seller says, well, because I'm closing in a month, and I don't, I spend $2,000 when I can spend $300. So put a Band-Aid on it and we'll close. Well, is that fair to the buyer? Well, I mean, a running air conditioner is important, right? So if you leave it up to the buyer, it makes a bigger incentive for the seller to not be involved in the property, not make decisions like that. And they could go ahead, put $2,000, which is the right thing to do, and replace the unit because it's going to break again. Okay. So I think that's a good reason why you have the buyer take care of all the repairs. It's another incentive for the seller to take your deal. Now you can write it up however you want it. That's how we do it. Okay. So anyway, 2 years later, I mean, we didn't have to do anything. That young couple took care of all the maintenance, repair, and everything. They brought a check in every month to us, and we sent the check to the owner. We made a small management commission for doing that. And then I got a call, oh my God, 30 days before the closing and said, well, we're going to close that transaction on the 30th of this next month coming up. On that 30th of that month. And so I only got a piece of my commission when we put the deal together. Seller got no money when we put the deal together. But part of my commission was paid, and I ended up with a commission on a $200,000 sale 2 years later. So it was like, woo, hey, fantastic. Time for a margarita, right? So anyway, that's the advantages of it. But you can word the lease purchase. This is the neat thing about it. Any way you want it. I mean, let's just say I teach to my associates. They want to buy. We have a seller that wants to sell, and they're willing to do a lease purchase. Well, let's just say they're asking $5,000 down, and the buyer, you have a buyer, and it's not selling. So to say the property's not selling because of the condition or the price or whatever, and the buyer says, "Well, I don't have $5,000, or I don't have $10,000." Okay, but the buyer says, "I work. We both work. We make good money. We want to buy this property either to live in or whatever. So what can you do?" Well, we can come up with $2,500. Okay. Well, why don't we offer $2,500 down? With 6 months later, you're putting another $2,500 down. Okay. So you can name those terms. Well, let's say you need 3 years. The seller says, whoa, I'm not going to hold the price of that property for 3 years. I don't see it. I see properties go up in value. Okay, fine. So what we do is we write, let's just say the property's $100,000. They're putting $5,000 down. If they close in 1 year, they need $95,000 more. You're paying $100,000. But if they want to extend another year, they put up another $1,000, which is non-refundable. And they get another year, but they have to close on the property at $105,000. Okay? And if they do it another year, they have to put up another $1,000 at the end of the second year, and they have to pay $110,000. Okay? Now, is that advantageous to the seller? Yeah. He looks at it and says, hey, that's a deal. That works for me. Now, is it advantageous to the buyer? No, it'd be better for the buyer to pay $100,000 at the end of 3 years, but the buyer's buying a property. The buyer's moving in, or the buyer's buying this duplex and going to make positive cash flow. And the buyer has the option to close sooner and get the $100,000 purchase price. So you can name the terms on your lease purchase any way you want it. That's the beauty of it. Now, it's subject to, of course, the seller accepting it. Or in your case, if you're the seller, it's subject to the buyer accepting it. You can't have it all weighed to the seller side, and you can't have it all weighed to the buyer side. You need to come to a meeting of the minds, and that's all negotiation. And, I look at it this way with both parties, the buyer and the seller. This is the way I look at it. If at the end of all the negotiations, the purchase price and the terms and everything fits the seller's position and fits the buyer, and you're willing to do it, then you put together a good deal. Okay, you're moving in, or you're taking over the management, or whatever. If you've negotiated a deal that works for you and works for the seller, and everybody's win-win, then it's a good transaction. Okay, and is the buyer better off buying or not buying? Well, certainly buying it. That's what he's looking to do, accumulate properties, or better yet, a place to live in. Is the seller better off, whatever they negotiate? Is the seller better off? Yeah, his property's sold. Now, maybe, it's down the road. Maybe the transaction will fall through. Okay? Now, this is kind of interesting. I had a lady call me, long distance from Chicago, I believe it was, and she says, I'm calling on the house you have advertised on a lease purchase. And she said, I'm interested. I'll take it. I said, well, don't you want to see it? She said, well, yeah, I'll see when I come down there, but go ahead and put the offer together. But I said, how much you want me to, write the contract for? She said, well, you got it listed at $79,900. Put it at $79,900. I said, how much you going to put down? I said, if they're asking $5,000. She said, I'll put $5,000 down. How much is the rent? $750 a month. What kind of credit do I get? $100 a month. Okay, fine. She says, I'll take it. Write it up, send it, and I'll fly down and look at it. And I said, well, what do you do? And she was making like $50,000, $60,000 a year. Her credit was impeccable, and she was being transferred here. I said, well, why are you doing a lease purchase? Why don't you just buy a house? Okay. Well, she says, well, I've done that before. and I've gotten transferred my job to a town. I don't want to rent, so I buy. Well, guess what? If I get transferred again, or I don't like the home I'm in, or I don't like the area that it's in, or whatever, now I've got to move. If I'm transferred again, I have to move. I have to list it with a realtor like you. I have to pay a brokerage fee. If the appreciation wasn't any good in the area, I'm paying out of pocket the brokerage fee. I have a mortgage payment to pay while you have it listed for sale while I'm transferred over to California. Okay? She says, now correct me if I'm wrong, but if I move there and I buy this house from you, and at the end of the year, I either get retransferred or I don't want the house anymore, I just bring you the keys. I said, well, yeah, basically that's all you do. Just bring me the keys and you forfeit the money already because we, got a non-refundable deposit in the purchase. She says, that makes so much sense. I can't believe it. She says, I'm ready to do it. So there's an example where a buyer is buying a house on a lease purchase with the possible intention of losing the money, and yet losing the money is cheaper than buying a house. So that's an example of how there's an advantage to a lease purchase. An advantage to a seller in a lease purchase, I don't think I really have to go into too much depth of the advantages, but just to give you a little idea, I would say in my career of 40 years, I have probably sold 15, at least, maybe 20 houses on a lease purchase, probably more than that. I just lost count. But I would say on average, 50% of those houses did not close. Okay, 50% of those lease purchases did not close. And that's about the ratio. 50% is our ratio in the office here. 50% of the lease purchases do not close. Well, guess what? They either did improvements to the property or the home appreciated in value. I got a $5,000 non-refundable deposit. I go in, I clean it up, I put it back on the market for $10,000 more or whatever, and I lease purchase it again. Now, I will tell you, I've done about a half a dozen houses 2 to 3 times. So for me, on selling my inventory, I love a lease purchase. It brings calls to the office because a lot of people buying on a lease purchase think they can't buy. Well, one of the first things I teach my agents to do, and you could do this as a seller, selling on a lease purchase, is I pre-qualify them, or I have my agents pre-qualify the buyer and say, what do you do in a lease purchase? Well, I thought that's all we could do. No, you can get an FHA mortgage. Your credit's good. You got good jobs. Blah, blah, blah. You can buy a house. So either sell them that house or sell them another house. So it's a good lead source. And if you're an investor and you put an ad in that you're selling your houses for, on a lease purchase, chances are you'll sell the house rather than lease purchase it if that's what you want to do, or you sell one of your other houses. And if you're a realtor, you can sell another house and not yours. I can't tell you how many houses I've sold that they called on my lease purchase ad that I ended up selling them a house, not my house, another one. So it was a good lead source for buyers. And the fact that you can sell one home I think the most I've ever did was 3. I sold one house 3 times. And I can tell you the story. I can go in depth, but we don't have time tonight to go into that. But I sold one house 3 times. First time I sold it for $50,000. The second time I sold it for $55,000. And the third time I sold it for $60,000. So 3 different times I sold the same house. And each time I got a non-refundable deposit. And each time I had a buyer in the house not having to do repairs the whole time. So it's a great way to sell if you don't have to sell. And that's the presentation I give to a buyer this is only good for a seller that does not have to sell. And typically the seller that doesn't have to sell, what usually is the price? It's usually higher. Well, I teach my people to buy at that higher price. That doesn't mean you can't get it for less, but I teach them to buy at the higher price because that buys them the terms that they want. Now, disadvantages, we've already gone over some of the disadvantages. The disadvantage to a lease purchase is you're not closing for a year as a seller. The disadvantage with a buyer, you're paying full price. The disadvantage to the buyer is you got to do the repairs, but as a buyer, you're willing to do that anyway. Another disadvantage to the seller is it may not close. And I put it to my sellers this way. You know what, Mr. Seller? If this deal doesn't close, you win. And Mr. Seller, if this deal does close, you win. So how do you beat that? Okay. I say to the buyers, I say, look, you're buying. If for some reason at the end of the transaction you don't want the house anymore, you can't get the financing or whatever. Yeah, you lost the deposit, but at least today you're buying a home and you have the ability to buy. You're in a house that you're going to buy. So, the likelihood of you buying that home is good. And I put it this way. The 75% of making any goal is setting it. In other words, making a firm commitment that this is how you set out how you're going to make this goal, and you spell it all out in writing in most cases. And 75% of the success of making that goal is setting it. The other 25% is just following it through with your plan. That's like plan your work and then work your plan. And that's what I consider a lease purchase with a buyer. If you say, yeah, I want to buy a house, yeah, I want to buy a house, yeah, I want to buy, and you never do it, where are you at? But if you want to buy a house, and the only way you can buy a house is a lease purchase, now you've set a goal. We've got to close on this house at the end of the year. Okay? So there's another reason why the lease purchase is good. Now, we already talked also, another disadvantage of a lease purchase is, and I kind of addressed this a little bit, is it's not for every seller. Okay? You have to be someone who does not have to sell on a lease purchase. It's not for every seller. But advantages, you can name your own terms. I think that's a great advantage. The next thing is you can control, like in Mark's case, you can control a lot more property with the same amount of money, or you can control a lot of property with little money. All right. So now I'm sure what Mark did a lot is you can do a lease purchase in what we call a sandwich lease purchase. You buy a property on a lease purchase. Maybe you renovate it. Maybe you do nothing. You turn around and sell it on a lease purchase. I've got an investor from New York right now that we manage quite a few houses of his, and that's what he's doing now. He doesn't want to be a landlord anymore. What he does is he buys houses on a lease purchase, and then he turns around and sells them on a lease purchase, and he just says, "Here, take it." So there's a lot of advantages as far as the simplicity is good. You don't have to qualify. You don't need that much money. You can, the terms are wide open. You can name what you want, provided everybody agrees to it. And I think it's a great way to buy if that's the only way you can buy. And that's kind of where I'll end this. We can do a question and answer if anybody wants to. But it's a great tool. It's a super tool. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, Larry. And I did so many sandwich. When we were on the bus tour, I did a lot of sandwich deals. One thing you hit on that it's good for sellers because you get to sell that same property over and over again. I don't think in those 80 plus houses I ever sold any of those houses. And I sold them all back 2, 3, 4, 5 times, like you said. But it's also a great tool for for landlords. Because, I can rent my stuff out, and you have renters who, trash the property. Or instead of renting, I lease purchase everything out. And now they all think that they own.
Right.
You can charge them another $100 or $200 a month using that. I'm going to take that $200 back and give it back to you after a year or two, which helps them save up money. But what it also does is puts more security in your landlord pocket in case they do trash the house.
Right.
And you put a stipulation on there that, yes, I will give you that $200 back at the end of the year or 2 years or whatever if you pay on time every month. Which, again, forces them to be a good tenant. So it's also good if you just want to rent your properties out. Rent them all as lease purchases. You know what? You're putting that high price on there. What do you care? If you sell them, go buy another one. You know, you got way more than you thought you were going to get if you actually sold the house. So, you know, that's another advantage of the lease purchase. One of the disadvantages that I found out, though, is that you don't get the depreciation because you don't actually own the house. What I used to do is, if I was buying the house in a lease purchase, I sort of did the owner financing wraparound mortgage kind of thing where I had them sign a quick claim over to me, so I had control of the property. But when I sold out, I always did it as a lease purchase, so I still have control of the property when I want to kick them out. So either... So when I buy, I own it. When I sell, I still own it, you know. And I get depreciation on both sides. Which, you know, that's $10,000 a pop on a nice property. So, any questions you have?
Let me mention something else, Mark. Another advantage is we've had people would say, okay, I'm buying this property. I own this property. In other words, as a lease purchase buyer, you can show paperwork that shows that you're the owner of the property. Okay, you have an equitable right to the property. Okay, however, if you want to show that you're only a tenant for whatever reason, okay, you don't want to show yourself as an owner. You can turn around and say, "Oh, I'm just a tenant. Here's my lease." So what happens is you can make it if you want to show it as an asset and you want to show that you're an owner, you could show both pieces of paper. And if you don't want to show as an asset and you say I'm only a tenant, then you just show your lease. So
now Steve knows where I get all my tricks.
Well, it's not a trick. It's just showing one piece of paper rather than two. But there's different ways.
That's 50 Shades of Gray.
Yeah, there. Shades of green.
Another beautiful thing of the lease purchase, still echo, or the rent to own is. Steve always has a out when he buys something, or 90% of the time he already has it sold before he thinks about having it bought. You put those rent to own signs out, you'll get 1 million phone calls. So you want to build your buyers list. So when you do see a property, you don't have to worry about, geez, do I have anybody want to buy over here? You got a built-in buyers list. So you put signs around the city because you know if they sold that particular sign, that's the neighborhood they want to put in there. You jot it down, and I got all these people want to live in this neighborhood, in this neighborhood. So now you can just go shopping for properties with a ready-made, at least a lease purchase buyer. If not, you turn, you get them with the credit repair and all that stuff, and you work them, and you get them into a buyer. So that rent to own, that's a huge. We could do an all-day seminar on rent to owns and lease purchases and all the wonderful things that comes with that stuff. So, well. Anything from Indiana? You guys all right over there? You learned something? I guess. All right, Larry, listen. Another fabulous conversation with you. We just love hearing from you.
What's up?
I enjoy it. Anytime I can.
Doc, did you get a good video of them? Doc, introduce yourself back there.
Yeah. I got some screaming kids.
Hold on, Doc. Hold on. Go ahead, Indiana. Go ahead.
Oh and
Yeah, sorry about that. I had some screaming kids, so I wanted to mute it. So I didn't want you guys to hear all the screaming and yelling. But go ahead, Doc. Continue.
Great information, guys. Powerful. Thank you.
Every week, Doc, tell them who you have coming up and what we have in green. Tell us about Dave Foster today.
Oh, okay. We had a chance to talk with Dave. He gave us a class on the life cycle of the real estate investor, kind of outlining the progression that an investor goes through as they start getting that first property, learning process, education, mentoring, and then developing to the intermediate stages of their investment, and how they're starting to diversify, starting to go outside that initial comfort zone, and then talking about kind of the end game of the more advanced real estate investors as they start to think about where is this going to end, and how do they want to be able to walk away, and what the conditions are going to be for retirement and that sort of thing. It was a really fine. And it looks like we actually another gentleman who is going to be we're going to be talking to about doing a course on table, and that looks like very promising. So every time you do this, you learn a ton, and you have the opportunity to develop more courses.
Yeah, Dave Foster does 1031 exchanges. If you ever want to save yourself thousands of dollars, he did $10 million worth of stuff for me. I don't know where that money is today, but if I had what I saved from Dave Foster right now, I'll be paid. But anyway, Dave does a 1031, we have a new group coming in. We have two new groups that are going to be teaching for us. We have, which Larry is really going to want to hear about, is Dr. Robert Hessler with the TICs, the tenant in common, so we can start buying some big stuff. Larry has 14 acres in Bahamas. He got places at Fort Myers Beach. He got we have bigger stuff elsewhere. And then we have this, tell us about this group over in West Palm, Doc. Because in June, we're going to start this Wednesday night showcasing some properties. So tell us about that.
Hey, Ian.
Next week he's coming Sharon Restrepo.
Restrepo, yeah. Next week. What's she talking about?
He's asking.
The talk next week deals with investing, of course, but what's interesting is her weekly program is going to be something different than what we've done before. She's actually going to offer investment property. She does business from Port St. Lucie down to Miami. And she's actually offering each week investment real properties and the opportunity investors to partner with her and actually get involved in some various properties. We've already done a little bit of this with Larry, where he's talking about properties. And that have had opportunities to partner. But this is going to be a regular program. We have an opportunity to be presented with special deals.
Cool.
And Larry, we want you to, and everybody, to add on to that. So if she's on Wednesday from 11 to 11:30, listen, we'll have 11:30 to 12, 12:30 to, let's keep on moving on that Wednesday. We'll showcase properties from up here in Nashville. Those guys in Indiana can jump on. Anybody in our group can, showcase some properties up there to partner in on.
I want to tell you about one, Mark, that we have to do something soon on, but it's a really good deal. There is a divorce situation on a 14.5-acre property in North Fort Myers. You remember Deal Road?
Yeah.
14.5 acres, 3 houses, a total of 11 buildings. The listing was listed at $449. It was dropped to $399, and today it was dropped to $299. And it is a court-ordered sale.
That wasn't that place that was like a school, was it?
No, it's not a school. But here's the deal. Picture it as 3 5-acre parcels, okay? The 5-acre parcel with no buildings on it is worth about 100. The one with 1 house on it is worth about 200, and the one with 2 houses on it is worth about 250. Now add that up.
Does the court have to
250, 450, and 100, 550.
Steve wants to know, does the court have to approve the sale?
Yes. Now there's a 280 some thousand dollars on it now. But I was thinking of putting 10 people together at 30,000. But we probably have to do the offer tomorrow.
Let's
Put the offer in.
Let's
Yeah.
put in. Is it?
Put the offer in. Les got that money in his pocket.
It's not a chancery sale though. You're not gonna have to show up and go and they give you a 10-day holdout period and someone can raise it 10%.
No. The only fear I would have is if we come in, let's just say full price, which I would suggest, is they could say, okay, now we have multiple offers, now do highest and best. But still, with an end resale price of $500,000, I mean, what would be wrong with going 3 and 4?
Yeah, just put the offer in and let the chips fall where they may after that.
All right, email me what name of the buyer out there, and I'll get it put in. And then we'll do a tank inspection or something.
Are you going in on it?
Yeah.
All right.
The 10 of us is 30,000 apiece.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we'll go to the house that's pretty bad. Another one has some work to do to it. The third one is a manufacturing home. It's okay. But there's 11 buildings on the property.
All right, we're in.
Yeah, I think it's a deal.
Just put any offer. Put any name on it, and then we'll break it up later.
We'll worry about that later.
Okay. Well, email me whoever's interested, and what I'll do is I'll get the offer and we'll have 10 days to work it out.
Yeah.
I'll have to
we're
do some funds.
Here you go.
We got proof of funds.
I'll get my attorney.
290. What's the offer going to be?
300.
Yeah, we got the proof of funds. All right.
So if you can get that, I'll get it tomorrow.
We'll get Doc's bank account. He got that in there.
He says you got to hear back.
I got 320.
That says 320 in his hand right now.
I got 320. I got
No, I don't
we got $500,000 in the room with us today.
Yeah, we got $500,000 in the room right now, so we're good.
Okay.
All right,
We can either sell them as 3 different pieces of property or all together or whatever.
Hey, you guys in Indiana, you guys want to jump in here?
Mark.
Thank you.
Mark, you guys want to jump in? Get a hold of Les, or call me, whatever. But Les got our number and name. Call me. You guys want to jump in? You got some friends? You can jump in.
Fantastic.
We go together with 15,000 apiece.
No, we're good. We're good.